Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to use the quotient rule. So the quotient rule is one of our derivative rules, and we use it when we want to take the derivative of a function that is a fraction. So you can see some examples I have right here. All of these functions are fractions. They have something on the top and on the bottom. And whenever you run into functions that look like that, you're always going to want to use the quotient rule. And so what I have in green here, this isn't a very technical way to phrase it, but hopefully it kind of is easy to understand for you. So whenever you have a function generally where you have some f of x expression on the top and then some g of x expression on the bottom, that's going to be your sign to that you want to use the quotient rule. So that is what you look for when you're figuring out which rule to use. So the quotient rule is right here. And I know that this formula can look kind of overwhelming when you first see it, but I promise that once you practice it a few times, it's really not too bad. So in this formula, f of x is the part of the function that's on the numerator, so on the top of the fraction, and g of x is the part of the function that's on the bottom, so the bottom of the fraction. And so you are going to want to memorize this because you will have to use the quotient rule a lot. I can almost guarantee that you will have to use it on the AP exam. So make sure you do memorize this formula. And really what you need to memorize is this stuff right here that I just circled. So the quotient rule says that the derivative will be equal to the bottom function multiplied by the derivative of the top function. Then we put a minus, and then we do the top function normally multiplied by the derivative of the bottom function. And then all of that gets divided by the bottom function squared. So once we do an example of this, you'll see how this works, and it's really not too bad. So this is the first example that we're going to do. So we want to find the derivative of this function f of x, where f of x is equal to x squared over 3x plus 2. And I have the formula right here for you to reference. So whenever you're doing quotient rule, this process is how I would recommend you do it every single time, because it's organized and should be able to get you to the right answer pretty easily. So the first thing you want to do is just write out what's your f and what's your g. So f of x, remember, is just the function that's on the top. So in this problem, the function that's on the top is just the numerator, that's the x squared part. And then next you want to write your g of x. So your g of x is just whatever is on the bottom. So in this case, the 3x plus 2 is what's on the bottom. So we'll put that in. And then the next step is to find f prime and g prime. So to do that, all we have to do is take the derivative of f of x and take the derivative of g of x. So f prime of x is just going to be the derivative of x squared. And if we use power rule on that, we should get 2x. And then same, let's take the derivative of g. So g of x is going to be the derivative of 3x plus 2. Taking the derivative of a constant makes it just go away, go to 0. So the 2 goes away. And then the derivative of 3x is just 3. So what we've done now is we've figured out what f, g, f prime, and g prime are. So the very last step is just to plug all of these green things into this formula, and then boom, you'll have your answer. So this formula says that first we take the bottom function g, so that's 3x plus 2. We write that first, then we multiply that by f prime. F prime is 2x. Then we put a minus sign. Then we write f of x, which is x squared. And then multiply that by g prime, which is just 3. And then all of that gets divided by g of x, which is 3x plus 2, and squared. So this right here is our answer for the derivative. So really it's just figuring out those 4 pieces, f, f prime, g, g prime. Once you have those, plug it in, and then that's your answer. So it's really not too bad. One thing I want to point out here is a very common mistake that I see students make a lot. And so this right here is our correct answer. But this one down here on the bottom is an answer that students put a lot. So I want you to look at that and figure out what's wrong with that. So what's wrong with this answer on the bottom is this part, this 3x squared plus 2 squared part. So students will write that a lot, but that is not correct, okay? 3x squared plus 2 squared is not the same as quantity 3x plus 2 squared, okay? You need to make sure that you put parentheses and square the entire bottom. Don't just put little squared marks next to each term. Put the entire bottom thing in parentheses and square it. Okay, so I see that happen a lot. Please don't make that mistake. So next, we're going to do one more example. We want to find the derivative of f of x, where f of x is equal to 6x cubed plus 9 over 5x squared plus 4. So same process as last time. Start by writing your f of x and your g of x. So f of x is just the function that's on the top. So that's 6x cubed plus 9. And then your g of x is what's on the bottom. So that is the 5x squared plus 4. And the next step, f prime, g prime. So for f prime, all we have to do is take the derivative. If we use power rule on that, we should get 18x squared. And then for g prime, again, use power rule, and the 4 goes away, and then power rule on the 5x squared should give us 10x. So those are our 4 pieces. And now all we have to do is just plug those into this formula. So first we write g of x, so that's 5x squared plus 4. Then we multiply that by f prime, which is 18x squared. Then we put a minus. Then we write f of x, which is 6x cubed plus 9. And then we multiply that by g prime, which is 10x. And then all of that gets divided by the entire bottom, so all of the g of x squared. So I'm going to put the entire bottom, 5x squared plus 4, in parentheses and square it. So this expression right here would be your derivative using quotient rule. And so another common mistake I want to point out is that our answer up here is the correct answer, but sometimes students will put this one on the bottom as the correct answer. But there's an issue with the one on the bottom. See if you can figure out what it is, but hopefully you'll notice that the order is flipped, right? So on the top, the 5x squared plus 4 times 18x squared goes first. Then we have the other term, but on the bottom, they put the 5x squared plus 4, 18x squared second, and then they put this term over here. So they like flipped the order of those two terms. That is not correct. Okay, so the order matters on the top. Okay, so please don't swap the order. That changes the expression. They are not the same. So when you memorize the formula, please make sure you memorize that the bottom function normally times the derivative of the top function is the first piece in the numerator. Okay, that always goes first. So don't flip-flop the order there. Okay, so just some advice when it comes to quotient rule. A lot of students will ask me, should I simplify my answer? And my answer to that is no. Do not simplify your answer unless you're asked to explicitly. So like these previous answers up here, if I were doing this on a test, I would leave it as what I have circled in purple. I would not do anything else to it. I would say that's my answer. If your teacher explicitly asks you to simplify, then yeah, you're kind of stuck and you have to. But if they don't tell you to simplify, please don't do it. There's no reason to, and it's just going to introduce the opportunity for you to make mistakes, algebra mistakes, and then you might get it wrong. So just don't do it if you don't have to. And then please put parentheses around everything. Okay, so a lot of students will do what I have written in blue here. They'll put this expression on the right instead of what's on the left. But these two things are not the same. Okay, it's when you put parentheses around these expressions, it changes the meaning. And so there are some situations in quotient rule where you could get away with not using parentheses. So if you personally feel super comfortable with when you should use parentheses and when you shouldn't, then that's great, keep doing your thing. But unless you feel super, super confident about when they're required and when they're not, just use them. You probably won't go wrong by using parentheses. Okay, so the safe bet is to just put parentheses around everything. That'll most likely prevent you from making any mistakes. And so in my next video, I'm going to talk about another quotient rule mistake that is actually, I would say, the #1 mistake that like 90+% of students make when using the quotient rule. So make sure you check out that video to see what not to do. And then please like and subscribe if this was helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next video.